To order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Please be seated. Jared, please take roll.
Ms. Bennett. Mr. Betkowski. Here. Mr. DeMarco.
Here.
Mr. Dewar.
Here.
Ms. Filiaggi.
Here.
Mr. Fatulis.
Here.
Ms. Hallam.
Here.
Mr. Klein.
Here.
Mr. Macy.
Here.
Ms. Nacarati-Chapkus.
Here.
Mr. Palmieri.
Here.
Mr. Paul Messina.
Here.
Ms. Pritzio.
Here.
Mr. Walton.
Here.
President Katina.
Here.
We have 15 members, or 14, I'm sorry, members present.
We'll begin with proclamations/certificates 12744-23.
A proclamation recognizing and celebrating the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium upon the occasion of their 125th anniversary, sponsored by all members of council.
Thank you.
Where is my proc?
Oh, who's presenting this, Ken? Oh, Councilman Walton? Okay.
Oh, he has. You want to go first?
You go.
Okay. I want to ask Mr. Goodman, you up here already, Mr. Goodman and his staff, please to follow him, please. And I just want to say that we take pride in our Pittsburgh region, and many of my colleagues, as well as DeWitt and myself, we like to recognize organizations and people for certain accomplishments. And 125 years is quite the accomplishment. So I'm going to use some visual aids right now. And whereas Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium will be celebrating its 125th anniversary, having first opened its gates on June 14th, 1898, with the goal of providing visitors with a rare glimpse of animals and plants they had never seen before. Through the years, the zoo has been transformed, incorporating naturalist habits for a great variety of species, as well as becoming a resource conservation, education, and research. And whereas in 1937, the zoo expanded with an addition of outdoor bear exhibits, though they are no longer there. In 1949, the zoo expanded its attractions to include the Children's Zoo, filled with imaginative exhibits for children. It was renovated in 1995, transforming into the Kids' Kingdom. And whereas what we know now as the aquarium, known then as the Aqua Zoo, opened in 1967 as the only public aquarium in Pennsylvania and the second largest aquarium in the country. Whereas the zoo came up with a new plan in 1980 to completely renovate, creating exhibits that mimicked naturalistic habitats, allowing animals to roam as they would in the wild. Following this plan came the Asian forest, 1983, the African savanna, 1987, the tropical forests in 1991, and niches of the world in 1992. Whereas the Pittsburgh Zoo became a nonprofit organization in 1994, owned and operated by the Zoological Society of Pittsburgh. Following this, the educational complex was built, creating space for the administration, 5 classrooms, a library, and a 300-seat lecture hall, furthering the zoo's mission of conservation and education.
Whereas through the aquarium, the zoo hosts various conservation efforts such as the Sea Turtle Second Chance Program, where turtles in need of aid are rescued, rehabilitated, and then released back into the wild. It also works on coral conservation efforts, studying and collecting coral from around the world. striving to find cures for certain coral ailments. And whereas more recent changes include the Water's Edge 2007, Unveiling of the Islands 2015, and Jungle Odyssey 2017, featuring animals native to islands and jungles. And whereas through 2020, innovative virtual and distance programming and drive-through events helped support the zoo during the pandemic. The Safari Amphitheater was renovated during this time, allowing for more guest space and a classroom dedicated to teen science programming. Whereas progress has continued with new leadership, plans for improvement, and new exhibits. And several record-breaking attendance months at the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium as the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium enters its 125th anniversary. The zoo's remarkable growth and attendance, exhibitory research, education, and conservation efforts are sending it roaring into the future. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Allegheny County Council members, Patrick Cantina, Bethany Hallam, Sam DeMarco, Jack Batkowski, Suzanne Filiaggi, Anita Pritzio, Tom Durr, John Palmieri, Nicholas Patulas, Michelle Nacarati Chapkus, Bob Macy, DeWitt Walton, and Paul Klein, and Robert Palmasino and Olivia Bennett do hereby solemnly recognize and congratulate the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium upon the momentous occasion of its 125th anniversary and wish the Pittsburgh Zoo and Aquarium continued success in the years to come. In witness thereof, have caused the seal of the County of Allegheny to be affixed this 14th day of June 2023. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
The mic is yours.
I want to thank the entire County Council for this great recognition. The county's always been so supportive of the zoo throughout all of the years, and as we go into this next phase, we have a new 20-year facility master plan that we're about to embark on. Just really going into this next 125 years, I have no doubt that the county will be right alongside of us building this great institution for the future. When the zoo was established 125 years ago, it was really all about, recreational entertainment, seeing animals that you've never seen before, plants and whatnot. So much has changed in 125 years. Although our million visitors still get that great recreational opportunity, now, our foundation is based off of conservation, education, animal welfare. They're at the core of everything that we do. One thing that wasn't mentioned, which I think is really, really important, is we're an economic engine as well. We bring in hundreds of thousands of people into Allegheny County. We employ, thank you. We employ hundreds of staff members, about $80 million in economic activity every single year, and we're just ingrained in the community, and we're so pleased to do so. So I just want to take this last opportunity to invite each and every one of you as my personal guest to come in for a tour, see the magic that happens there every single day. It really is amazing. We have the best staff. We have some right behind us. We have Don Hudson, our chair of the board, as well as members of our conservation staff, our advancement staff, and our communication staff. So they're the ones that make it all happen. We've been doing this for 125 years, so we're not going to stop anytime soon. And once again, thank you so much for this honor.
Anybody else on the council?
Take a photograph after.
Councilman Klein, I believe you want to say something first.
Yes, before you come up for the picture taking, my grandfather was born in 1898, the year that the Pittsburgh Zoo opened. And he was not born here. He was born in Romania. But when he found his way to this country and started his own family, I, somewhere down the road, became his first grandchild. And from the time I was 2 years old until I think I was 30, he would pick up me and then my brothers and sisters, all of us, and take us to the zoo every Sunday. And at the age of 30, I thought, maybe I'm getting a little too old for this. But there is a brick at the zoo that bears his name, and his name was Sam Solomon, and he'd be very, very happy and very proud to have his name a part of the record today. And thanks for all the great work you do at the zoo. My daughter and son-in-law, my grandchildren, live just a few blocks from the zoo, and I don't think they're there every Sunday, but they're probably there every day, or close to it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Ready? Thank you. Yep, take your time. We'll do it. But we only have 3 of them tonight, so 2 of them are Big Brother, Big.
Can I have 2 of you come on this side?
He just will not let you alone, will he?
Okay, so get ready on me real quick, guys. Everybody ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, go ahead.
Here we go. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're old. You're old.
See, that was my story. I'm serious. We have our own zoo here. That's right. That was good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've done it.
And we don't give tickets out for our zoo.
12745-23.
Before proceeding, please let the record reflect that Ms. Bennett is now present. 12745-23 is a proclamation congratulating Mr. Dan O'Brien for being named the 2023 Big Brother of the Year, sponsored by Councilmember DeMarco.
Could I have the folks from Big Brothers and Big Sisters come on up here and join me? I was telling these folks as I saw them in the hall when we were outside that I apologized to them that I had to stand in for what had traditionally been Tom Baker's role as the proclamation chief, okay? But really, I'm so happy to do it because Big Brothers and Big Sisters is such a tremendous organization, giving hope and helping so many of our children out there who need some guidance, some mentorship, and things of that nature. And that's why I'm so happy to do this and support these folks who were selected as a Big Brother and Big Sister of the Year. So I have 2 proclamations here. One for Mr. Dan O'Brien and one for Ms. Jennifer Antoon. Whereas Allegheny County is fortunate to have a number of teachers, community volunteers, and individuals who support the mentoring movement and who work selflessly to improve our children's odds for success in overcoming adversity. And whereas each year, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Pennsylvania selects a deserving Big Brother who exemplifies the best of one-to-one mentoring. And whereas Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Pennsylvania has selected Mr. Dan O'Brien as the 2023 Big Brother of the Year. And whereas Mr. O'Brien has been DeMarcus's Big Brother for 10 years, since DeMarcus was 7 years old. Now, DeMarcus struggled in school and had challenges with peer relationships. These challenges caused him to be withdrawn, and his mother wanted him to get him the support that he needed. And whereas Mr. O'Brien and DeMarcus have spent years building a trusting relationship and talking about difficult issues, grades, peers, COVID, and even DeMarcus's mom's diagnosis with breast cancer. His mom explains that Mr. O'Brien has changed her son's life for the better, and what stands out the most is that Mr. O'Brien taught DeMarcus the importance of kindness, how to handle his emotions, and how to be accountable. And whereas in 2018, Mr. O'Brien joined the Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Pittsburgh Board of Directors and is also active in his role as Secretary, Development Committee member, and Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee member, Mr. O'Brien's contributions to the community have been exemplary. Yet none so as immeasurable or profound as that of the relationship he has formed with his little brother, DeMarcus. Now, therefore, be resolved that I, Allegheny County Councilmember Sam DeMarco, do hereby congratulate Mr. Dan O'Brien as the 2023 Pennsylvania Big Brother of the Year. I commend him for his continued dedication towards serving as a positive role model, supporting vulnerable children, and helping them succeed. A witness thereof, I have hereunto caused the seal of the County of Allegheny County to be affixed this 20th day of June 2023.
I will accept it on behalf of
Okay.
Dan. Dan welcomed a baby boy yesterday afternoon. So he is at the hospital with his other 2 children. I'm sure his family is welcoming Uncle DeMarcus as well. That's what they call DeMarcus is little. So
tell
on
them who you
behalf of
are.
him, I am Maggie from Big Brothers Big Sisters. I am not Dan.
Maggie's been here often.
I've been here. I'm with the organization for 11 years. Happy to do my job every day and represent the organization for the wonderful work. And Dan's been a wonderful advocate for the work that we do. So be sure to give this to Dan, take a picture with him and DeMarcus for the wonderful work that they have done for the organization. But we
Thank
have
you.
other special guests
Now
here.
Jennifer, right.
I am not. She's
We have a special proclamation for you as well. Whereas Allegheny County is fortunate to have a number of teachers, community volunteers, and individuals who support the mentoring movement and who work selflessly to improve our children's odds for success in overcoming adversity. And whereas each year Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Pennsylvania selects a deserving big sister who exemplifies the best of one-to-one mentoring. And whereas today Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Pennsylvania has selected Ms. Jennifer Antoon as the 2023 Big Sister of the Year. And whereas born and raised in Pittsburgh, Ms. Antoon has been Carly's big sister for 6 years, since Carly was a shy 6th grader being raised by her Aunt Maria. Carly had challenges in school and in peer relationships. These challenges caused her to be withdrawn, and her aunt wanted her to get the support she needed to increase her self-esteem, become a leader, and have new friends. And whereas Ms. Antoon grew up in nearly identical family circumstances and used that connection to develop a supportive bond with Carly. Ms. Antoon has gained Carly's trust through years of consistency and provides a safe space for Carly where she can fully be herself. Her Aunt Maria explains that Carly has grown so much by being connected to Ms. Antoon, who has helped Carly become more independent, self-motivated, and a strong and confident leader. And whereas Ms. Antoon's influence at Big Brothers Big Sisters goes beyond her relationship with Carly, she uses her extensive professional network to recruit new volunteers. She's also quick to offer help for any of the agency's needs and thinks creatively about how she can leverage her network. Ms. Antoon's contributions to the community have been exemplary, yet none so immeasurable or profound as that of the relationship she has formed with our little sister Carly. Now therefore be resolved that I, Allegheny County Councilmember Sam DeMarco, do hereby congratulate Ms. Jennifer Antoon for being named the 2023 Pennsylvania Big Sister of the Year. I commend her for her continued dedication towards serving as a positive role model, supporting vulnerable children, and helping them succeed. Congratulations, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
This, and please, say a few words.
I'm a little short.
Yeah, it bends.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you, council, and also, obviously, thank you to everyone at Big Brothers Big Sisters for having me here today. I'm honored to receive this recognition, but I'd like to use this recognition as a way to bring awareness more to the program. Right now in 3 counties, there's over 200 kids at any time, mostly boys, looking for a match like myself and Dan. It's a great program. It's priceless. It costs nothing but some time and your trust with a child that is in need, that has a lot of potential. I got involved in the program because, let's be honest, being a kid's really tough. And with the internet now and everything else that I didn't have as influences, I think that having a big brother, big sister is great. I also was a only child. I was raised by my Lebanese immigrant grandparents who are wonderful to me, but at the same time, having a youth advocate consistent in your life, regardless of their situation, is what's key. I've learned a lot from the program. I'm trying to bring more people into the program. So if I could ask any of you today to maybe, if you talk to someone this week or even on the organization you're involved in, if you could please, bring awareness to this program, talk about it. We're really in need. That's, the program obviously needs funds and whatnot, but the biggest thing this program needs is actual people. And Dan was a wonderful big as well. I love Carly very much. Our program's now over, but I just was at Cedar Point with her for the 4th year in a row last weekend, and I plan on potentially getting another little in the fall. So thank you everyone for your time, and have a great day. Don't want to forget this. Thank you very much. Up here.
You arranged this.
I did.
You think they're going to see it over here?
No, I'm good.
Ready,
I
everybody?
don't have to worry about him. I'll see him.
3, 2, 1. Got it.
Hey, congratulations.
Robert.
Thank you, buddy.
Oh, boy.
You just fall down.
Yeah. They don't walk back and forth. We like to say, come on. Yeah. No.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to take more than that to hurt him.
Want ice?
I'm okay.
You waited for it.
Okay, the remaining proclamations will be read into the record. 12747-23.
A proclamation recognizing and congratulating Shaler area baseball, softball, and boys volleyball teams on their 2023 seasons, sponsored by Councilmembers Pritzio and Hallam.
12748-23.
A proclamation recognizing the borough of Franklin Park on the occasion of its bicentennial anniversary, sponsored by Councilmember Filiaggi.
12749-23.
A proclamation recognizing the borough of Swissvale on the occasion of its 125th anniversary, sponsored by Councilmember Nakaradi Chapkus.
12750-23.
A proclamation recognizing the borough of Whitehall on the occasion of its 75th anniversary, sponsored by Councilmember Palmieri.
Any public comment on agenda items?
We've none.
Okay, approval of minutes. 12751-23.
A motion to approve the minutes of the May 9th, 2023 regular meeting of council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Presentation of appointments, none. Unfinished business, Committee on Government Reform for the second reading, 12561-23.
An ordinance directing that a referendum question regarding the amendment of the Home Rule Charter of Allegheny County in order to amend Article 3, Section 6A, an existing provision relating to seeking multiple county elected offices simultaneously, be placed on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot, sponsored by Councilmember Dewar.
Councilmember Hallam?
Thank you, President Katina. The Committee on Government Reform met on July 5th, and we sent this bill to the full council without any recommendation.
President Katina, I will move for approval.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion?
Yeah.
Councilwoman Bennett?
Thank you, Chair. President Katina. As I said in the committee meeting regarding this bill, my concern is that it's not, it doesn't create parity. For those of us who run, say, in the same election as the executive, the treasurer, the controller, we would not be able to run for those, whereas if you were in an off election from those offices, you would be wide open. So it makes some folks that have that off election cycle have an advantage, if you will. So to me, it doesn't create parity as far as even our own council, so I will be a no vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, President Katina. Firstly, I would, I know Councilwoman Bennett brought this concern up in committee, and I would say while it would not preclude any of the members of council who are up this year from running for any of higher office, it would require them to choose which position to run for on the same ballot. So it would not preclude them from doing so. In terms of the rationale for introducing this, I introduced this following a couple of our local legislators here last year, now Congresswoman Lee and Lieutenant Governor Davis, running for their two new higher positions simultaneously while running for both of their state house seats at the same time. Little did we know when those state house seats became vacant that they would be two of the three deciding vacancies that would decide the balance of power in the Pennsylvania State House. I also saw from those vacancies that were created not because of any type of outside circumstance that we can't foresee, but just because we had folks run for two offices at the same time and win in highly Democratic districts, that there was additional cost to be paid for by the taxpayers in addition for running additional special elections. There was constituency lapses in the offices in those specific state house districts. I see these types of openings as something we could help fix potentially in the future here in county government. Right now, there is nothing precluding someone from running for every county office on one ballot, every row office at the same time, an at-large seat and their district council seat all at once. Now, I know some members of the body here believe that that is democracy, that is their prerogative to do so, and that is the voters' decision to make that. I completely understand that point of view. I think this is something that, there are very two different sides of the same coin. I simply believe that given what we just saw with Congresswoman Lee and Lieutenant Governor Davis, this type of change would be one not just for a little bit more of in terms of making things more fair for the continuation of services for our county government, but also would look to, in advance, try and stop those types of discontinuation of services, would stop additional costs to taxpayers for running additional special elections, and would not affect really anyone outside of a few members of this council in terms of the parity question. So thank you, President Katina.
Thank you. Councilmember Marco?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, for recognizing me here. I hear both sides of this argument, but I don't really see it as a tremendous problem because, one, the issue brought up in regards to special elections is moot when it comes to county government here, because if you're a county council member, you're elected to another office, or you resign or move on, or whatever the case may be, someone's appointed. So there's not an additional election or a special election that's held to fill that seat. So there's not those additional costs there, okay? Secondly, in this primary, we just passed a referendum which gave members of council the ability to run without having to resign. And it seems to me like this is almost like an attempt to put something like that back in place. So again, I understand and appreciate what my earnest colleague is trying to do, is trying to fix things that he believes are issues, here with the current code and things of that nature. I just don't see them as the problem that he does at this time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilman Pujols?
On Nick.
Didn't know I wanted to talk. I do. Sure, I did. I think this is, I had mentioned this in the committee meeting, this is a part of democracy. I believe anybody has the right to run for any office they choose, whether it's a conflict to themselves or others. Quite frankly, you run that risk of losing both elections when you do something like that. But as you could see that during the chief executive race, we had a couple candidates that didn't run for their own positions, and they lost, and now they don't have a job. So maybe they should have run for their jobs as well as chief executive. But bottom line is I'm not in favor of this, so I'm going to vote no.
Councilmember Howell?
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually agree with Councilman DeMarco. So the examples that Councilman, I know, surprised, I know, I'm so sorry, but I couldn't believe it myself. But the examples that Councilman Dorr gave are actually not at all solved by this ordinance. As Councilman DeMarco said, the county offices are appointed when there are vacancies, so this doesn't actually really solve that problem. It just feels like we're undoing the resign to run rule that we just removed via ballot referendum. But more so, my issue with both this bill and the next bill, so that you don't have to hear from me twice, are that they are changes to, yeah, I thought you would like that, are that they are changes to the charter. And I know that I've been in various coalition meetings that have been talking about widespread changes to the charter. There's actually a law in place that says that if we make a substantial change to the government structure, that we could be barred from changing the charter for 5 years. I don't want to do that without careful thought and planning about the direction we're going to go with widespread charter changes. There's also already a question on the ballot from legislation that this council passed that I believe is a waste of the ink that is printed on the ballot, but regardless, it is already on the ballot. And so I don't want to complicate things by adding these additional ones that I don't think are necessary, nor do I think they really solve the problems that Councilman Dorr is maybe well-intentioned but wrong trying to solve. So I will be a no vote on both of the charter amendments.
I know I'm becoming repetitive, that we are just a part-time body. We have a limited number of hours to really dig into the things that come before us. And in my opinion, we have been racing along with much of the work being done on council. And as my colleague, Ms. Hallam, just mentioned, a bit more thoughtfulness, I think, would benefit many of the things coming before this body. And those of you who have read our solicitor's opinion know that we just dodged a bullet last week with something before council that was moving ahead right smartly. And a second concern that I've been having, that I mentioned at our prior meeting on assessments, is the way our committee structures work. There isn't a process that ensures that council hears opposing opinions. And in most of the committee meetings that I've sat in, including those I've chaired, really it's a one-sided argument. We really don't have a devil's advocate presenting us with, here's some things that you should be considering along with the good that might come from this ordinance or this motion or this resolution, but that there are some negatives. Almost nothing in this life is purely white or black. There's always some shade of gray that needs to be or should be in a thoughtful body considered. And so I will be voting no on everything tonight.
Anyone else? Hearing no one else? Oh, sorry.
Apologies.
Watching.
Thank you. President Katina, I actually will be voting yes for this. And in my time, very short time on council, I have come to know Councilman Dewar is to be very thoughtful, actually, and very open to any changes from other members of council. This bill has been, from what I understand, since January. There has been plenty of time to make comment, to put up devil's advocates. I have done that myself on other bills. So, but I understand everyone's concerns. I do, and I respect that. I believe that the path chosen for a referendum, I believe our electorate is smart enough to be able to digest different referendums. So I would like to thank Councilman Dewar for the work that he has done. He's put a lot of effort into this, and the next one as well, which I have co-sponsored. But so I will be voting yes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jared, roll call vote.
On the motion to approve, Ms. Bennett?
No.
Mr. Betkowski? No. Mr. DeMarco? No. Mr. Dewar?
Yes.
Ms. Filiaggi?
Yes.
Mr. Fatulis?
No.
Ms. Hallam?
No.
Mr. Klein?
No.
Mr. Macy?
No.
Ms. Nacarati-Chakas?
No.
Mr. Palmieri?
No.
Mr. Paul Messina?
No.
Ms. Pritzio? Mr. Walton?
Yes.
President Katina?
No.
Ayes 3, noes 12, the bill fails.
12637-23.
An ordinance of the County of Allegheny, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, directing the referendum question regarding the amendment of Article 3, Section 5B of the Home Rule Charter of Allegheny County, which places term limits on only the chief executive, be placed on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot, sponsored by Councilmembers Dewar and Filiaggi.
Councilmember Hallam?
Thank you, President Katina. The Committee on Government Reform met on July 5th and sent this bill to the full council without any recommendation.
I'll move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion? Councilman Dewar?
Thank you, President Katina. So I know the concept of term limits is one that is very divisive. There are pros and cons to both sides of that argument. I'm a firm believer, after having served some time in county government, that term limits do more good than harm. Right now, the only county office that has any type of term limits attached to it is the chief executive. There have been people who have been serving in county government and on this body longer than I have been alive, and I believe that in order to facilitate a continuation of the new ideas, fresh ideas, as well as trying to cut through a little bit of the political machinations that come with holding an office uncontested for 30-plus years. Putting some type of term limits in place is a better idea than not. Right now, I think, especially on this body, for folks who see this very much as something that is a hobby, having some type of term limits in place would instill some type of urgency in those members, as opposed to using this as a way to kill time. I ran for this body to introduce legislation to try and improve people's lives in this county and improve this county's government, and I've done just that, and I will not apologize for doing that for what I think is right. This has come up before. I now understand this is a divisive issue, and I want to clarify something that came up in committee that I sent an email out about earlier today. We had a question in committee about when this would kick in and how it would affect both the current members of council and our current row officers. If this passed both tonight and on the ballot, and if it was adopted by the voters, the term limits for the 3 term limits would start for all members following this year. So for the members who have already served, so let's take Councilman DeMarco, who's already served a term of council. If this passed on the ballot, his first term of his 3 term limited terms would be this following one, so it would be 1 of 3. So the same thing for any of the upcoming row officers. For someone like you, President Katina, who's would be up in a couple years, the first of your term limited terms would start in 2026. So the way it's written right now, I know there was a question about this in committee, I believe, is the correct version and the one that is in the spirit of the way the bill was intended to not try and limit anyone who has already been serving, but to start with a clean slate, institute these term limits, and move forward with having everyone having 3 term limited terms going forward for our row offices and county council. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman DeMarco.
Mr. President, I must have a fever or something, because Councilwoman Hallam is agreeing with me, wanting me to change, makes me want to change everything I said. Councilman Doer is using me as an example for term limits, okay? We're in like bizarro world here, okay? But no, seriously, I understand where we're going with this. I think people like the idea of term limits because they don't like people, they don't like professional politicians, they don't like people being in office forever, okay? So the upside or pros from something like this are that we take and bring the other row offices in line, or it's not we, the people who vote would be bringing the other row offices in line with what they have for the county executives. It would be preventing someone from serving for almost a de facto life type term, building a political machine, and amassing, untold power. But at the same time, it deprives the people of Allegheny County, if they believe that they're being ably represented, the ability to continue to have that representation. So I'm also inclined, while I may not be supportive of the legislation, Councilwoman Hallam saying that these things going on for referendum could restrict the ability for other changes to be made to the charter. That may be attractive to some as well. So I don't know exactly where I'm going to fall when the vote comes to me on this piece of legislation, because it truly is one of these, there's some good and there's some bad, But I wanted to make sure that we told the public what some of that good and the bad was. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Council Member Hallam? Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, oh God. I meant to recognize Councilman Walton.
Thank you. While I respect Councilman Durr's sincerity in his efforts to put forth legislation that he believes in, I have some substantial concerns, particularly about this legislation, this particular piece of legislation.
Okay.
I am fundamentally opposed to term limits in general. And I think that the voters themselves determine term limits. My concerns regarding term limits also include, if legislators are term limited, what ultimately happens in the system is that lobbyists and staffers are ultimately the decision makers and not the legislators and the voters themselves. lobbyists and staffers don't have the necessary, I'm not trying to demean either of them, but they don't necessarily have the interest of the general public at the same level that I hope the actual legislators do, or the responsiveness that legislators should have. So look, I believe in open government, I believe in honest government and transparent government. But at the end of the day, I believe people should rule and not lobbyists and staffers. And as a result, I'm going to vote against this legislation.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Councilman Peoples?
Fundamentally, we'll go back to that democracy type thing again, but the way I see it this way, let's not try to fix something that isn't broken. But if you look at politics and democracy in general, it goes back to George Washington, the first president of our country. He had term limits. Senate and Congress didn't. Governor's term limit, senators and state reps, no term limit. It goes on down the line. Chief executive term limit, council, no term limit, all the way down to local municipality. It doesn't seem to be broke. So I'm not sure why we'd want to fix it, but I'd be more happier to repeal the term limit on the chief executive than to do it this way. But either way, I'm not interested in this.
Did you like that one?
Huh?
Nothing.
Huh? Oh, I think I'm done. Thanks for the interruption.
Thank you very much, President Katina. I would, again, short time on this body, I have been meeting a lot of people in my district, District 2, and overwhelmingly, the two things that my constituents have requested is that county, state, federal politicians work together for the good of their constituents, work together, and the other is term limits. And so I probably will have no sway whatsoever on the first one, working together. I've not been helpful on that, but the term limits, if I can help people in my district and what to give them something that they would like, this is our attempt to do that. So I believe that at least in District 2, term limits such as this are a step in the right direction and help. And again, it's a referendum. We're not making the decision ourselves. We're giving this decision to the people of Allegheny County. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jared, please.
Well, I would say one thing, Mr. Futulis, with respect to if we're looking at the executive branch, I mean, this is not unusual that these limitations are imposed on governors, but obviously not on state senators, state reps, and what have you down the line. But Washington was not term limited. He simply decided that 2 terms was enough. And they tried to lure him back into running a 3rd time, and he said no thanks, but it was for other reasons. Political partisanship was on the march, and he was really troubled by that. But then, of course, when FDR was president, he decided to seek a 3rd term. A lot of people who were on board and supporters of his were outraged because Washington had set this nice precedent of 2 terms. And you could make the argument both ways, but my thinking is that 3 terms is a pretty good run. So I will be voting no as well.
Thanks for the history lesson.
Oh, anytime.
Jared, roll call vote.
On the motion to approve, Ms. Bennett.
No.
Mr. Betkowski.
No.
Mr. DeMarco. No. Mr. Dewar.
Yes.
Ms. Filiaggi. Yes. Mr. Fatulis.
No.
Ms. Hallam.
No.
Mr. Klein.
No.
Mr. Macy.
No.
Ms. Nacarati-Chapkus.
No.
Mr. Palmieri.
No.
Mr. Palmacina.
No.
Ms. Pritzio. Mr. Walton.
No.
President Katina.
No.
Ayes 2, noes 13. The bill fails.
12709-23.
An ordinance of the County of Allegheny, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending the Allegheny County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 220, entitled Campaign Finance Reports and Statements, in order to establish requirements and prohibitions relating to the county's searchable public database of campaign finance reports and certain forms of coordinated campaign expenditures, and clarifying existing law relating to penalties for violations, sponsored by Councilmember Dewar.
Councilmember Hallam?
Thank you, President President Katina. The Committee on Government Reform met on July 5th and affirmatively recommended this bill to the full council, so I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Councilman Dewar.
Just a very quick overview. So I mentioned when we were discussing the campaign finance bill that should the finance limits bill pass and be upheld, that we would have to take a second step to adopt what's called coordinated communication language into our administrative code. This is that bill. What that does is outline specifically what is or is not an in-kind contribution in regards to independent expenditures, which will now come into fruition in existence now the campaign finance limits are in place. So while this would not have done basically anything prior to the limits being in place, it's important that we adopt this language, which is already set in place at the federal government, given their limits at the federal government stages, into our administrative code now that we have the same limits in place for ourselves. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Hearing no one else, Jared, take roll.
On the motion to approve, Ms. Bennett.
Yes.
Mr. Bekowski.
No.
Mr. DeMarco.
Yes.
Mr. Dewar.
Yes.
Ms. Filiaggi.
Yes.
Mr. Fatulis.
No.
Ms. Hallam.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Macy.
Yes.
Ms. Nacaretti Chapkus.
Yes.
Mr. Palmieri.
Yes.
Mr. Palmacina.
Yes.
Ms. Pritzio. Mr. Walton. No. President Katina.
Yes.
Ayes 12, noes 3, the bill passes.
We now have two bills that were released from the Special Committee on Assessment Practices this afternoon for votes tonight. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add bill numbers 12525-22 and 12742-23.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Point of order.
Yes.
Can we do that? A bill come out of committee today and vote on it?
That's what we just voted on, to allow that to happen.
That's what the question is. Is it?
If you vote to add it to the agenda
Okay.
affirmatively, you have to first vote to add it to the agenda, and if there's an affirmative vote permitting it to be added to the agenda, you can then vote on the bill itself.
I just want to make sure we're doing procedure correctly. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, bill number, please read 12525-22.
Bill number 12525-22, an ordinance of the County of Allegheny, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending Article 209 of the Administrative Code of Allegheny County entitled Office of Property Assessments, Section 5-209.05, entitled Chief Assessment Officer Duties and Responsibilities, in order to establish a mechanism for ensuring continuity in the Chief Assessment Officer position. Sponsored by President Katina, and that's it.
At this point in time, I'd like to make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion. Councilman, I don't know, there was a tie for hands up first. Yeah, I was quick. Councilman Bukowski.
My comments are much like I've been repeatedly making. I have a certain amount of just angst when the agenda gets amended, particularly if it's something significant that the public might be expected to comment on. And in fact, I'm rather disappointed that Mr. Sully isn't here, because I think every single time there's been something assessment related on our agenda, he's offered public comment in that. So I am troubled when something substantial is added at the last minute to the agenda. I don't think it's good policy. I don't think it's good practice. And I'm just not the way we should be doing things. And then along with that vein is exactly what I said earlier, in that when things get hurried up, there's opportunities for bad things to happen. I'm repeating myself, and I apologize to council.
Thank you. Mr. Sully, actually, he's having surgery, so that's why he's not in attendance this evening, or else he would have loved to have been in our committee meeting. He heavily supports both of these bills. Councilman DeMarco?
I need to echo Councilman Bekowski's statement here. I mean, from a sunshine law perspective, okay, we've had no public comment on this. This thing was just amended downstairs, and then, at 4 o'clock, at 4:15, now we're bringing it up to vote here, and so we're not hearing from anybody or giving the public a chance to comment. Also, to Councilman Bekowski's earlier statement, I do agree that you like to have time to be able to hear both sides. You want to hear the folks that are for the bill, so you can understand what perceived benefits will be. You also want to hear from the folks who are opposed so that you can understand, what some folks believe the negatives would be, because none of us, especially in a part-time body, can be all-knowing, okay? Or should anyone ever make that claim. And so we have that issue before us, and the whole process is broken. Whether it be in Harrisburg or Washington, the legislators, when they introduce a bill, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion around the bill. Then it goes to a committee. There's discussion around the bill and everything there in their committee before it's brought up in the committee, where it's then marked up, debated, before all these things go up to the floor, where all that takes place and happens. Here on council, we are like moving at warp speed with legislation that's like flying in here, left and right. And I have concerns about some of the text in the bill in regards to, again, I believe that it brings up an issue with the charter where it's saying that the county manager can hire folks, but only with the consent of council, okay? And so that's a concern for me in this bill, because I don't believe that we can be hiring staff. So, my objections are twofold. One, no public comment. I think it violates the sunshine rule. And then the second thing being that I don't believe we have the power to hire people. Now, I can support us taking and passing tonight another piece of legislation which came out of committee, which was just to extend the appeals window, to clarify that for people because they're under time constraints. But in this particular bill, I have an issue with that, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening?
I do.
Councilman Walton?
I have to share the concerns expressed by Member Betkowski and DeMarco. I fully support extending the appeals period to ensure that residents of Allegheny County are that their taxation is addressed in an appropriate and equitable manner. That is first and foremost in my mind. But I do have some significant concerns about whether or not we have the ability to hire staff that is not responsible and accountable and controlled by council itself. It flies in the face of common sense. The government of Allegheny County has an executive branch, a judicial branch, and a legislative branch. I think we're engaging in real overreach. Real overreach. And it causes additional concerns.
I think it needs to be vetted.
In how we deal with these issues. I think it's, I'm voting no. I think it's inappropriate. I think it's short-sighted. And I also don't believe, as Member DeMarco said, that it gives the community, the residents of Allegheny County, an appropriate amount of time to respond with concerns that they may have as a result of the decisions that we're making. Thank you.
Solicitor Frank,
Yes, sir.
could you give us an opinion on this? What your thoughts are?
You want it tonight? All right, okay. All right, well, I'm ready. Okay. If the issue is it an overreach of the council's power to essentially approve a chief assessment officer that has been designated by the county manager, as I understand it. I do not think it's any different than the various appointments that come to us that then require council approval. I think there's a separation of powers there. I think there's a precedent for doing this, and I don't believe it is an overreach in terms of the powers of council.
Thank you. And as a matter of fact, I believe this bill's been in committee now for, I want to say 6 months. And some concerns were raised, and we addressed them and changed the bill. But obviously, these other concerns, it's the first time I'm hearing about tonight. And if we had ample opportunity, I had enough meetings. Actually, I was criticized for having too many meetings, and because of this process, because everyone thought we wanted to get the job done sooner than later, and we just sort of kept circling the airport, and we never brought the plane into land. And I was trying to do this, obviously, before our summer recess, since we're not going to be back for almost 2 months at this point. So that's where, I mean, to respond to some of the concerns, I mean, I just thought that that would be appropriate, just to put that out there for everybody. Is there anyone else that has a comment? Councilman Dewar?
Yeah, President Katina, so this was actually the first assessment review practices meeting that I missed today. I had another meeting, 3, that ran long that I wasn't able to attend. But one of the things I would ask is, obviously, the second bill, the one that the others had mentioned in terms of expanding the window, that is, the timeliness of that is important. I mean, you being the primary co-sponsor of this bill with other members having the concerns, and also to allow the public to view and comment, as well as, you know, our solicitor to craft a full opinion on this. Is the timeliness of this bill, as well as the window one, in your opinion, as the lead sponsor of the bill, critical to passing it now, or could we pass this?
Well, it was asked, the problem right now is that we have no way to verify the veracity of the numbers that are being sent to STEP. This actually bill basically changes that so that we can request that information, that data, and basically check that information to be sure it's truly accurate. Or a third party could even, it would be out there publicly for a third party to review that information, namely the taxpayers, to make sure that we don't have, unfortunately, I mean, some of the problems that we had before. I mean, it was a check to basically ensure that, and that's what this bill's tried to address.
So yes, the timeliness of the first one, yes or no? Would you feel like, does this need to be passed today, or can we wait until after recess? And, you know, unfortunately, we're about to hit recess in terms of having public comment, having our solicitor take a deep delve into it, just to satisfy Councilmember Walton, Bitkowski, and DeMarco's concerns. Because I'm not against the bill outright. I just also don't know if I have, I mean, I wasn't aware I was going to be voting on this tonight. I thought the only one potentially coming out of the assessment practices meeting could have been the clarification of the assessment windows one, not this one. And like I said, unfortunately, this was the first one that I missed. So I just, I feel uneasy in terms of clarifying this, voting on this right now, given those concerns. And also, I haven't had to take a deep delve into the bill beyond the conversations we've had in committee, of which I've been a part of.
Well, we can always, I mean, if there's something uncomfortable in the bill's always able to be amended.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Bitkowski?
I was just going to ask if the chair would get an opinion from the solicitor regarding the question that was raised earlier, if this item was substantial enough to entail a violation of the Sunshine Act.
Okay, I don't see that there's any violation of Sunshine Act here, because the Sunshine Act requires that we publish the agenda, and then if you want to amend the agenda, you are permitted to do so by a vote of the governing body, but it has to be, it's a two-step process. You have to, first of all, take a vote to allow for the agenda to be amended. And if that passes, you can then go to the case in chief. But I don't see any violation of the Sunshine Act.
Councilman DeMarco?
Mr. President, for clarification, I think the solicitor just gave his opinion regarding the Sunshine Act, but what he spoke on was amending the agenda. He didn't clarify how was the public supposed to have an opportunity to weigh in and speak on this?
Well, Councilman, there's nothing that I'm aware of in the Sunshine Act that states where you do that, where you amend the agenda, how there would be any issue or right of the public to comment on it. The provisions on the public access are quite general, and they just say that, or public comment, you just say people can make public comment. I believe in the Sunshine Act itself, it doesn't say that the public comment must or must not relate to that that's on the agenda. I think it's a gap in the Sunshine.
Mr.
Councilman Walton?
Look,
Too many questions.
in the instant case, I'm not going to say with any authority whether or not this violates the Sunshine Act or not. What I am going to say is irrespective of whether it violates the Sunshine Act or not, this does call into question the issue of transparency, the issue of open government, the issue of responsiveness and the opportunity for input by the public at large. Regardless of any other issue, we amended the agenda today on a committee action, and we're voting on it tonight without any opportunity to have input from the public at large. Is this the kind of government we want to be accused of operating? Is this what we want? Is this how we want to be viewed? For me, the answer is no. You guys do what you think you need to do. I'm going to be accountable to the folks that I represent and say, I will not ignore their voice. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Go ahead, Councilman DeMarco.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may, I would respectfully ask that you potentially hold this or pull this from a vote till we give the public the opportunity to weigh in, because failing to do so, I would have to vote no on this tonight, but yet I share with you the desire to ensure that the county is being held to provide the correct information to the STEB board, and that we have the ability to access this information. So I'm on board with that, but without giving the public the opportunity to comment, without talking about these other two things, which is giving council the ability to yay or nay the hiring, and then the ability to basically fire or terminate this person, I just believe it requires a little bit extra debate. I share with you where you want to go. I just question the vehicle we're driving in right now. And I'm sorry it's come up at this late moment.
I understand that, Councilman DeMarco, but it was your, maybe I'm confused, but I thought it was we made the amendment change where you offered the amendments basically based upon your input, changing it to a full majority or 2/3 of council to fire the officer. I'm just confused as to what changed between then and now.
Sure. You had, in original language, you had put in forth that just the majority of council would be needed to hire and fire this person. I thought that was absurd with all the split votes that we have here. That's why I suggested or asked that we make it 2/3. Upon further investigation, looking into it, it became apparent to me anyway that it violated the charter again, and that we're interfering with the executive branch by trying to make those decisions to do so. If we would have looked at doing, how like you have for the Board of Elections. For the Board of Elections, we have an oversight board. It's called the Board of Elections. And those folks review and oversee the elections process. I'll wait till you guys are finished. But it oversees the elections process, okay? If we wanted to make some sort of charter change that would create a board, potentially of the president of council, the 2 at-large members, something of that, to ensure that there was a check and balance, that someone was able to look out for the taxpayers and make sure that the information being recorded in the real estate division in regards to sales and the assessment and what was being fed to the state was accurate, I could support that. But it was this coming up and my becoming aware of it that caused that change, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. See, I guess I'm concerned because I believe there's a little bit of a sense of urgency at this point in time. Obviously, there's been court cases, and we've had numerous testimony in front of the entire committee about how these numbers were basically, I'm sorry, I have to use the word malfeasance. This was deliberate in, these numbers the numbers were cooked. The judge basically said the county cooked the books. And with this ordinance, basically, we're going to have that information available to the public. So the public will be able to scrutinize the figures that the county is basically sending to the STEB board. And I believe that's actually critical in providing transparency. If we're going to talk about transparency, we want to make sure the public has the most accurate information. And this bill goes to ensure that accurate information, that they can verify the veracity of what the county is sending the STEB. And right now, based upon what's happened in the past, I really don't have much faith in what we're doing. And that's why this bill was written, to try to give the taxpayers basically a chance to basically double check the county. And I stand by it that I think that, the sense of urgency is needed because, like I said, I just don't trust the system at this point in time.
Mr. President, I understand the lack of trust in the system because we've seen numbers that didn't appear to add up based upon a Commonwealth Court ruling. But I still stand by my comments regarding the Sunshine Act. One of our colleagues on council used the Sunshine Act in the Jail Oversight Board meeting to require an additional hearing to take place for additional time to be put on the agenda so that the public would be able to come in and make comment before that vote could be approved. I see no reason why something similar here shouldn't take place. And I understand and share with you the determination to get to the bottom of it and fix something as quickly as possible, but I think we do it the right way is more important. And if we're talking about serving the public here and doing this for the public, shouldn't we give them the opportunity to comment on it?
Jared, could you please read what the amendment actually was, what we amended in committee? Because the rest of the bill has not changed, correct?
Correct. The amendment in committee today was the addition of a clause at the end of section 5-20905C13. It would have added it did add the language, and shall provide such information in the format requested by the council president with regard to the reporting by the chief assessment officer regarding the CLR numbers.
So that was the only change to the entire bill that we're talking about this evening?
Today, correct.
Today. Everything else stayed the same? Okay, so we had, like I said, ample committee meetings to discuss. I understand how we could be concerned about maybe the public hasn't had an opportunity to discuss the reporting method or how the reporting is done, but really I don't see any reason is to basically handicap the public into basically providing the information to them based upon that one piece of information. If we were trying to do something against the public, I would be obviously against it, but that goes to help the public. That goes to help the taxpayers of Allegheny County because that little line basically entitles them to the information that has supposedly been cooked in the past. And therefore, that's why I'm so strongly advocating for this tonight, because it was only that one little line, and that one little line makes all the difference in getting the information to the taxpayers.
Mr. President, what you're talking about here is not going to have an immediate effect in anything in regards to the taxpayers because, as you shared earlier here, these cases are being litigated in court. And yes, while we've had multiple committee meetings, until the time when we bring a bill up on the floor, we discuss it and we actually vote. All of us reserve the right to be able to change our mind based upon additional information, insight, direction from solicitors or whatever, okay? And that's exactly what's taking place here this evening.
Okay. Is there anyone else this evening? If there's no one else, again, Councilman Futulis, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but waved my hand so much it fell off.
And Mr. President, if I would say too, in regards to public comment, and we talk about public comment, there is no public comment in our committee meetings. So the fact that we've had this in the committee for a number of meetings doesn't necessarily say that the public had the ability to comment on it.
We've actually allowed the public to comment in the special committee. I mean, there's been numerous people that have not on the agenda that have commented that technically were part of the public. Thank you. Councilman Futulis?
Okay, well, you know, we talked about transparency. We talked about the legality of us hiring someone. Gee, none of those things have ever been done before.
Councilman Futulis, who are we hiring?
No. In the event, the administration fails to hire someone, I believe I read that we would. Do I have that right? If they failed to.
If they fail to act.
Okay, that's the question. Chances of that happening probably be slim. But I think what I'm more concerned about is what's best for the people right now, how we vote on this, because I don't want to slow the process up any more than it's been. But the bottom line is, it's about the people, even though about the transparency, about somebody speaking about this and the legality of if the administration fails to hire someone, then we would have that right to do so, which that may never happen, and we cross that road if we got there. But I think what I'm getting at is I was downstairs, I'm all ready to vote yes, and after everybody up here talking, now I don't want to vote yes. The question is, what's the best thing to do for the people of this county? That's what I'm concerned about. I don't know what to do.
Councilman Klein?
Well, it seems that transparency can be given expression in any number of different ways. And, obviously, the people's voice, as we all agree, does matter. But it would seem that this bill, and what is being proposed here, the spirit of it is really kind of grounded in this notion of transparency and openness. And so I think that, given that reality, and given the fact that it will be something that will be a part of governance in this county, I think that we're honoring our commitment to transparency in moving with this. And look, obviously, we could, kick it down the road, come back after recess. I don't know what more we would learn by delaying it further than we have an understanding of right now.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Councilman Macy?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just because there are these concerns, whether some ideas that this isn't the right way to go, that there isn't transparency, there is transparency, there's just too much unanswered questions to vote at this point. I do believe that we should get back, get these questions answered, vet at a meeting. I mean, I'm not on that committee, so I can't vote one way or another, but I can speak. But I just think that we may be moving a little too fast, and I'm a no vote.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Jared, please take roll.
On the motion to approve, Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Bekowski?
No.
Mr. DeMarco? Mr. Dewar?
Yes.
Ms. Filiaggi?
No.
Mr. Futulis?
No.
Ms. Hallam?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Macy?
No.
Ms. Nacarati-Chapkus?
Yes.
Mr. Palmieri?
Yes.
Mr. Palmacina?
Yes.
Ms. Pritzia? Mr. Walton?
No.
President Katina?
Yes.
Ayes 9, no 6, the bill passes.
Liaison reports. Any liaison reports this evening?
I apologize, there was one other bill.
Oh,
The
oh
motion-
yeah, we got to get to okay. 12742-23.
An ordinance of the County of Allegheny, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending the Administrative Code of Allegheny County, Article 207, entitled New Board of Property Assessment Appeals and Review, Section 5-207.08, entitled Filing of Appeals, in order to clarify applicability of special assessment appeal windows for 2022 and 2023 for properties impacted by court-ordered adjustments to the county's common level ratio.
At this point in
I
time,
apologize, it's sponsored by President Katina and Councilmember DeMarco.
At this point in time, I'd like to make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion?
Wait a minute.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Jared, please.
Wait.
We already did. We added them both.
My concern with this one is the same as the last one.
I'm sorry?
My concerns with this one
Same as
are the same as members of council have already expressed for the last one. The same issues apply.
Okay. Anyone else this evening? Jared, take roll.
On the motion to approve, Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Bekowski?
No.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
Mr. Dewar?
Yes.
Ms. Filiaggi?
Yes.
Mr. Fatulis?
Yes.
Ms. Hallam?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Macy? Not with us.
He left.
Ms. Nakaradi Chapkus?
Yes.
Mr. Palmieri?
Yes.
Mr. Palmasina?
Yes.
Ms. Pritzio? Mr. Walton?
Yes.
President Katina?
Yes.
Ayes 13, no 0, with 1 member absent. The bill passes.
Liaison reports now. Anyone have a liaison report? New business ordinances and resolutions. 12743-23.
It's a motion to the Council of Allegheny County authorizing an information request pursuant to the terms of the FAST Act and urging enactment of the Derail Act and Railway Safety Act of 2023 with all deliberate speed, sponsored by Councilmember Dewar.
Councilmember Dewar?
Thank you, President Katina. So I held this, at that time, acting chair Palmieri held this last week to allow members time to read the legislation in which this motion is in support of. For those of you who don't know, I mean, everyone probably does. I worked for Congressman Lamb in 2018, and I was, in fact, the organizer for Beaver County. So I know a lot of folks around the Ohio Pennsylvania border, right around where East Palestine is, that were affected by the train derailment there. And since then, I've been following a number of pieces of legislation around that derailment, and one of which was introduced, one in the Senate, one in the House, one by Senator Fetterman, Senator Casey, and the one in the House was introduced by Congressman DeLuzio here, called the Derail Act. So very quick overview of what the Derail Act would do. Derail Act is decreasing emergency railroad accident incidents locally or derail, would require the U.S. Department of Transportation to impose more strict regulations on trains carrying hazardous materials. It would direct the Department of Transportation to modify the definition of high hazard materials, flammable train to mean a single train transporting one or more loaded tank cars of a Class 3 flammable liquid or Class 2 flammable gas or other hazard materials to scarcely determines necessities for safety. The Department of Transportation currently defines a high hazard flammable train as one carrying hazardous materials of at least 20 consecutive cars or 35 total, limiting the number of trains subject to more stringent safety rules. This change in this bill would subject more trains to more stringent safety rules. The train that derailed in East Palestine was not being regulated as a high hazardous flammable train due to that narrow definition of the category. Additionally, it would also require rail carriers involved in any potentially toxic derailments to provide the National Resource Center, state, and local officials with a list of dangerous materials on that train after the derailment no later than 24 hours after any crash. It's a very small change I think we can make, and given that I worked in some of the communities that are affected by this derailment, I think this legislation, I was disappointed to see it not adopted faster through both Congress and the Senate, but I appreciate some of our local leaders taking up this charge to make these types of issues a little bit more safe, and I urge my colleagues to support this motion tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Hearing no one else?
I would like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So as somebody who, during their day job, is intimately familiar with the train derailment in East Palestine and had actually prepared some documentation for how to protect yourself and your families during this particular time as it related to air quality and water quality concerns as well as soil. I am in support of this wholeheartedly. However, I also will use this opportunity to urge this body to have a deeper discussion about how rail traffic through our county could potentially impact us should another East Palestine happen. And so I had been asking for, and still continue to urge, a conversation here with our emergency management to really understand how they are prepared at the county level, because we know that there is rail traffic that goes through densely populated areas through the city of Pittsburgh, through populated neighborhoods. And I think it's an important conversation for us to have as a council and as a body here so that we can understand how not only the county's emergency preparedness is planned for something like this, but also all of the 130 municipalities who have emergency personnel who would have to respond if, gosh forbid, something else would happen. So thank you.
Go ahead, Councilman Walton.
I share many of the concerns raised by Member Chapkus. In talking to borough leadership of a number of communities that I represent, they have real concerns about train traffic, and Norfolk Southern specifically. I think that it would behoove us to work in a collaborative fashion with the administration and try to develop some sort of process where we can allay some of those concerns. I'm not so sure, given the legislative process and the courts and the regulations, what we can do.
I can do it.
But I do believe that continued conversation, and I use the word continued conversation, should take place between the county's emergency management operation and entities, the boroughs, and for those council members that may be interested in hearing. I think we need to work in a collaborative manner as opposed to an adversarial one, and take pot shots at one another and really think about what's in the best interest of the folks that we represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Councilman Futulis.
I think it's a great motion that we understand what's going on, but to be more frank, last summer, we had a train derailment here in Allegheny County, happened to be in my district. It was in Harmarville, where at least 7 train cars carrying oil were dumped into the Allegheny River. And it was a one-day newscast, media, and he didn't hear anything after that. But there was plenty of oil that was dumped in the Allegheny River, and nobody really knew about it. So this motion's a good motion, so we should learn. Not necessarily because what happened in Boardman, the flames were for days. It made national news. But here in our own county, we have our own derailments that we just weren't aware of the ramifications or the pollution or whatever happened during that time, because I lived it in my district. It was on my way to work, and I saw it every day, what was going on there, and it was, they just finished it up just about a month or so ago, the repairs from that long.
Mr. President, I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to castigate anyone. And Nick, you're right. It made news for a short period of time, but I'm not so concerned about the news that it makes. I am more concerned about the actions that organizations and entities engage in. And I'd like to, if you had some concerns about whether FEMA, Allegheny County Emergency Management didn't do all that they could, then that's a different story. Whether they're on PXI, KDKA, or is irrelevant to me. What is relevant is that entities are doing all that they can to protect our residents.
Well, my point being the fact that we weren't kept aware. I personally was aware because I talked to the actual workers that were on the job, and they told me what was going on, but it wasn't something that the rest of council knew. We didn't know.
you didn't answer my question. Did the entities do what they were supposed to be doing?
Yes.
And so
They
your
did.
answer was yes.
Yes.
So, okay, so that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. You know, we should not be about getting attention. We should be about making sure that our residents are protected and served.
Well, my point was the fact that, you know, I'm agreeing with this, and I felt that we should have had more input as far as, or should I say, knowledge of what happened there. There's water supplies that were very close by Oakmont Water, then the Pittsburgh Water Authority, Fox Chapel, Penn Hills. They all collect water out of that river, and that was just above all those water supplies. So it was an issue, but it wasn't something we knew about. I knew it because it was in my district, and I looked at it personally. That's all. Don't make a big deal out of that.
Anyone else this evening? Councilman Palmieri.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. You know, the trouble with democracy is we don't do anything until the bombs are dropping. Once that happens, then we start moving. Well, it's about time that we try with this, and I commend Councilman Durr for bringing this up. It's about time that we take an issue like this to our representatives up in Harrisburg and wake them up to the fact that, you know what, we need legislation, we need protection down here. It's about darn time that they do that. And the more we insist on it, the better, I think, the better it's going to be. So I'm all in favor of this. And it's unfortunate that it always has to come after a disaster. You know, whatever happened to being proactive and try to prevent this stuff. Maybe it's time now we become proactive and say, you know, wait a minute. It's time now to regulate these railroads, and let's get on with it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Hearing no one else, let's do a roll call vote.
I apologize. I did not hear a second to Mr. Dewar's motion.
I'll second it.
Second.
On the motion to approve, Ms. Bennett.
Yes.
Mr. Bekowski.
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco.
Yes.
Mr. Dewar.
Yes.
Ms. Filiaggi.
Yes.
Mr. Fatulis.
Yes.
Ms. Hallam.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Ms. Nacarati-Chapkus.
Yes.
Mr. Palmieri.
Yes.
Mr. Palmacina.
Yes.
Ms. Pritzio. Mr. Walton.
Yes.
President Katina.
Yes.
Ayes 14, no 0. The bill passes.
12752-23.
A motion of the Council of Allegheny County expressing support of airport service workers and the Good Jobs for Good Airports Act, H.R. 1499, SB 753, or National Wage and Benefit Standards in FAA reauthorization, sponsored by Councilmember Hallam.
Councilmember Hallam.
Thank you, President Katina. So I know I've talked to some of my colleagues about this, and I hope you've all had time to read through this motion. It's pretty simple, actually. It's calling on the folks who are representing us down in Washington, D.C. To support the Good Jobs for Good Airports Act, to include it in the upcoming FAA reauthorization. So the current authorization expires in September 2023, so there's a lot of conversations right now going on what will that reauthorization look like. Basically, it's setting standards for airports that receive federal funding. It is good for the workers at the airport. It is good for the folks who use the Pittsburgh airport. This legislation is good for everyone. So although we are not in Washington, D.C. making the votes, hopefully the support from County Council will get this included. So I would like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. One nay. Notification of
I
contracts.
apologize. It was Mr. DeMarco, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
12753-23.
A communication summarizing approved executive actions for the month of June 2023.
Is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Any public comment this evening?
No.
To adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. So moved.
My grandfather and his little friend.
Oh my God, is that you?
That's me.
We made it for